Speak.
Camera.
Rolling.
Scene 12, shot C, take 10.
So, can you please list all the challenges faced during production?
Oh, yes.
So with every film, you're gonna run into problems on set. But with Bloom, we ran into an insane amount of problems.
I would say that the biggest one would be losing our main location, the Bloom house, the night before we were supposed to start shooting there.
We had a roof location that everyone living in that place had COVID while we were filming there.
Filming right next to a major road, which causes huge problems for sound.
We had the most horrific wind I'd ever seen.
We had the police show up.
The first AD, who's in charge of safety, had to step away on our arguably most dangerous day of shooting. Over black.
Thank you for choosing blue.
Interior, Kelly's room, evening. Kelly Young, 21, a lanky guy, zips up his bag. He feeds his fish and adjusts his glasses. And action.
My name is Emma Shea Stewart and I'm the writer of Bloom. So I think Bloom for me was kind of like a first experience in the fact that I had never really written a romance story before, and I wanted to try something different and something out of my comfort zone, and it felt like the space that I was given to write it was the perfect time to do that.
I think the thing that was unusual about Bloom is that in our production house, we tend to have a lot of films about a little bit gloomy, a little bit of mental problems, and I really liked that it was about love. It's tough in college to write those kind of scripts because I think dark is easier and love is hard, and we had a really good crew.
Just to get some movement in the shot, could you guys kind of walk around in the back two aisles? You two together, then Gabe you, and I can kind of show you what you need. And rehearsal action.
Okay, first you have the producer, Mackenzie, who's meticulous in terms of staying ahead of problems.
I decided to produce Bloom when Nick, the director, onboarded me. I had previously actually decided not to really continue with UTV films and focus more on independent projects and independent studies, things of the like. But once I had the opportunity to work with Nick, I knew I had to take it up because he is just such an incredibly talented filmmaker and just general human being.
Then you have Nick. Nick is a rare student, digs really deep on every problem, every shot, every setup, why, what are the motivations, why the actor's doing this. That's unusual.
Where should I stand?
I've been standing this.
Is that supposed to be the security camera?
Yeah.
Cool.
Joe, I love what you're doing with the wall here.
If you open it, you don't see outside, huh?
Nope, don't see it. I wanted to direct Bloom for a number of reasons. The first one being that from the first time I read it, I just fell in love with it. Then on top of that, I could relate to that idea of love versus technology. I mean, I get it. It can be hard out there. Just the idea of whether you're on Tinder or you're doing it the more traditional way. Some days you kind of wonder, what would it be like if there was just an AI that could tell you who you were supposed to be with? But I know every time that I think about that, I wonder that, I come back around to the idea of that's just not how human beings work. And then finally, another reason I wanted to direct Bloom is because I had been kind of on a string of projects where I wasn't directing.
And I remember challenging him one time. I'm sure he remembers this. I think it was on a stairwell here in this building. Nick is such a good producer. I thought, have you thought about being a producer more than a director? And I think Nick was like, what? He didn't say that, but I think he was thinking like, I know what I'm doing.
I needed to direct. Directing is the thing that gets me out of bed excited every single day.
The idea of the stubbornness of doing it is Nick's forte. And you have to have that as a director. You have to say, I hear you, but I'm gonna do this. And then when he does it and executes it, you're like, well, well done.
I knew in that very moment that it was something that I had to pursue and had to pursue with full force.
And then literally out of nowhere, I get this email asking to direct. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's Nick, you know, like he has a reputation and he's asking to direct. It kind of felt like I knew him already in a way, because everyone always talked about him, and like how like Bill always talked about how he like immediately just like went into UTV and he was already like in a high position, which what else could you ask for? Like somebody who knows what they're doing.
Because one of the main jobs of a director is to understand why the writer wrote what they did. Because you'll hear me use intention a lot. You'll probably be sick of that word by the end of this meeting.
To be completely honest, like giving away a script is one of the hardest things to do in the world, and especially because Bloom had become such an important part of my life for like all those months that I was writing it.
That very first script meeting was all about me just asking questions, and I tried to ask as many questions as I could. I probably had like 5 pages of questions, because even if they were questions that I felt I knew the answer to, it's my job to take her words that are written on a page and bring them to life. So I wanted to understand every single one of those words so that I could have a clear picture of her intention, and thus from that find my own intention.
Nick showed that he cared, and he told me, and he was very vulnerable to me, and he told me how he loved the script and how he related to it. So to have somebody come up to me and be like, hey, I'm also gonna be vulnerable, like it was just like instant trust. So over the summer, right after Bloom got picked to be made, I'd kind of known for a while, I'd been talking to Nick, and he had kind of warned me about how much we were going to be working the script over the summer. I didn't know it was going to be so much, but I'm grateful that it was, because it was definitely an experience. But basically for the entirety of the summer, Nick, Mackenzie, and I met probably a few times a week, going over scripts, updates, just talking, and it would be like hours long. Like I remember like going in sometimes at like 3 and not getting out till like 9 and just like talking and talking, which was like a first for me.
And some of those meetings would just be hours and hours and hours of talking about a single decision a character makes and if that was the right way to go with it. And other times we would just totally rewrite the script from top to bottom and just try something totally drastically different, just to make sure that we were confident in the story that we were telling, and to make sure our screenplay was as bulletproof as possible.
I remember one time outside this building, Josiah, Nick and I had a great long session about talking about the camera moves and everything for this move where they moved from one room to the next, and they were doing camera tests, and I thought, I mean, I knew from that moment this film's gonna work.
And then in terms of working with my director of photography, Josiah, we did our shot list of the film while the script was being written. I wanted us to wait until it was mostly in place so we wouldn't have to drastically change anything too much, but we just hit the ground running in terms of our shot list.
All right, so the end of this into a montage.
Yes.
Seamless shots, trying to figure out how we're gonna go from location to location.
So let me pitch you what I'm thinking for each of these chunks, okay, and then you can maybe pitch me what you're thinking, and then we can figure out what we can take from each of our ideas into a way that can make it flow. Okay. I really like working with Josiah because we have a lot of the same tastes, but one thing that we did on this film was we were great at challenging each other. My general philosophy when working on the shot list was if he had an idea for a shot in a scene and I had the same exact idea for a shot in the scene, then we would put that idea aside for a second and come up with a totally new idea, just to make sure that we weren't going with just the easiest option. We were really making sure that it was the best option for how to shoot that scene.
So for a film like this, it was kind of necessary that we had things kind of like these camera tests and animatics, and we needed those elements to kind of feel that we could actually do it and, you know, do it well, obviously, because camera tests were essentially just clipping together the rough version of doing a shot like that and making it seem fluid and if it would be possible. And animatics were essentially to create a sense of how long the film could be and like the general flow of the film through pretty basic kind of abstract designs that Nick did. And for me, it was kind of especially exciting because I get to do like the voices of the characters to sort of like emulate them. I'm bad at talking to people. You're doing pretty well right now. I'm bad at the asking out part.
I am bad at talking to people.
Really? You don't seem to be doing a bad job right now.
Well, I am bad at the asking out part.
Bloom checks that box for me.
So the house location, which house location is actually made up of multiple locations. It's not just one house. It's the living room and the kitchen and the hallway are our Bloom house. It's what we all refer to as the Bloom house. Then we have the bedroom and the bathroom, which was filmed in an apartment complex completely separate from the Bloom house. Then we have the roof and the backyard, back walkway, which was an entirely different house.
Then we had a ton of meetings with our production designer, Max, and with our editor, Luke, and with the entire crew. We met with as many people as possible, as many times as possible, even before the semester started, just to make sure that we knew exactly what we wanted to do with this film and we were in the best possible position before we started filming.
That idea of the pre-production, that idea of the planning is the easiest thing to neglect in a college setting, but it's the most important thing to actually do in a true setting of making films. So when students show that, they're kind of spreading their wings and ready to go.
We made sure that we put all of our effort into making sure that pre-production was hit super hard, super heavy. Everything we could possibly figure out, we figured out so far ahead of time so that we would be prepared for anything that could go wrong. And even though we prepared as much as we possibly could, our production was still one of the most stressful things I think I've ever experienced in my entire life, just because the completely unexpected happened at every single turn. Every roadblock that could have happened pretty much happened. I would say that the biggest one would be losing our main location, the Bloom house.
And not only did they dropped us the night before we were supposed to shoot.
But basically we were meeting with this lady, we were supposed to film at her house for an entire weekend. We were paying her, we gave her the dates, the times, gave her the number of people that would be there. Pretty much every single detail we could have given her. And the night before we were going to film there, I checked in with her just to make sure, hey, just checking in, making sure that you're ready for tomorrow, yada, yada, yada. And she was like, what do you mean? And I'm like, what do you mean? We're filming there tomorrow, remember? And she's like, no, we never talked about this. This was never discussed. This is so unprofessional. All this jazz, and I'm looking back at the text message proofs where I had absolutely talked to her about this, and inside you're feeling so frustrated, like, oh my gosh, I didn't mess up here, this isn't my error, yet here I am losing the most important part of my job, basically.
Mackenzie's texting me, and it's bits and pieces because she's dealing with the situation on her own, and she's trying to fill me in as she's doing it.
Tried offering her money, like more money, and didn't work at all. She's like, I'm sorry, it's not gonna work, we have company over. And I'm like, okay, so what do we do?
She ended up calling me and we were like, okay, so we don't have a location. And not only, this location was the location we were supposed to film most of the film at. And at that point, I think probably most of the crew was asleep. And so it was just like, okay, we have tonight to figure this out and to film in the morning. I think initially, Mackenzie and I were really hoping this was a problem that we could solve without bringing Nick into it. But we quickly realized that this was something we all needed to work on.
And around midnight, I got a text from Mackenzie saying, hey, Maddie and I are on the phone and we're wondering if we could add you to the call. As a director, when your AD and producer are having a phone call the night before shooting and wanting to add you to it, you know something's gone wrong. So I kind of took a deep breath and I picked up the phone, and there was about 15 seconds of awkward banter going, hi, how are you doing? Oh, I'm good. How are you doing? Oh, we're doing okay. And then they pulled off the Band-Aid and let me know that less than 12 hours before we were supposed to be filming there, we had lost our key location. And that's some tough news to swallow, but luckily, I think I'm a very level-headed person, and I actually am one of the few maniacs who loves the problem solving of filmmaking. So as big of a setback as it is, I was immediately after hearing that news in the mindset of, so what do we do next? How do we recover? How do we problem solve? And let's get this thing moving again.
Well, we can't film at the Bloom house because we're not allowed in. That's just life. So we're gonna have to completely flip-flop our 2 weekends of shooting, because we were supposed to film 2 different weekends.
I remember I woke up the next morning, I saw Mackenzie had sent out an email at 2 a.m. that had said, hey guys, we have a change of plans and we're not filming at this location anymore. And I was like, Maddie, what is she talking about here? Like, this is kind of a really big shooting location.
But our day 2 ended up being filming the Willow Bend stuff, so then we did the stuff that was outside under the gazebo.
And we were not planning to film that, so I think it was supposed to be the last day.
Good job. Remember the black one? The one? We need that right now.
What's your name? Okay, gotcha. Sounds good. Put to weigh it down, like over here or something.
LED panels, bro.
Really?
Yep. Damn. I think we'll be fine time-wise. We're not going to multi-cam it. We're just going to do hers and then his for the lighting.
Okay, but we're still just doing over the shoulders, not...
Yeah, just over the shoulders,
okay.
no singles.
That's
yep.
totally fine. Okay, cool.
Copy that, copy that.
Be a little bit more charmed with his, like, I can't make mine look like that. Sound good? Cool. Okay.
Nikki, can you do the 24 mil?
Keep going down.
You got it, Max.
Keep going down.
Thank you, Max.
Still in frame. Keep going down.
Yeah.
And then you're like no longer.
I think right there. That's
yeah.
Right. Here's good. Look at it. And then can you look at it for me? Yeah, I like that. Okay. Joe, are you happy with the frame?
Good to go.
Okay.
Camera.
Rolling.
Scene 25, shot A, take 4.
And action.
Okay, so our final scene for Bloom is under this beautiful gazebo at this location. And it's outside. And we're like, there's no wind, there's no noises, we're totally fine to film here. It's gonna be gorgeous. Yeah, so we get there and it's the windiest place I think I've ever tried to film in, ever, with the exception of like maybe the ocean.
Most of the times we were just kind of delayed on like sound. Eden, my sound manager, had to keep coming in, just being like, hey, quiet on set. It was intense.
And not only did we have the sound problem of wind on all of our mics and that type of thing, but we also had the visual aspect of wind. All of our set design was being blown around and little things like that just made it so hard to even make it possible.
It was basically like hell on earth as far as sound goes, but we did eventually figure it out.
Damn, you guys are remarkable, considering everything that's going on.
For realsies? Cool.
I mean, considering everything that's going on, I think that's really good.
You like it?
So thank you. I think we can work with it.
Yeah, thank you guys so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Bye, guys.
Okay. This was also the night after we lost the location, so the people who lead the crew were going on like 2-3 hours of sleep pretty much, maybe 4. It was a hot mess, but we did get it done, and it does look amazing, so.
I'm like, I want to cry too. If COVID didn't exist right now,
I know, right?
Like that would just take another level off.
And then day 3 would have been filming on the roof. So that was dealing with COVID and bunk beds and ear issues and all that jazz.
Our goal was we needed to get our actors on a rooftop, and then we had to film said actors on the rooftop. It sounds great and easy. It's not, especially as a first AD. I had to think of so many things that could go wrong.
I remember Nick and Mackenzie both coming to me and they were excited. Hey, we got a roof. And as someone who's a former AD, I always have to say, what does that mean, that you have a roof? Film sets are not real in some ways to people. So they think everything's, like if you step off a roof, it'd be just, there'll be a endless staircase to get you down. So there's a lot of danger involved in getting gear on a roof, which you had to have on a roof, people on a roof, you don't know how old the roof is. There's so many things that can happen on a roof. And a ladder, again, way too much space for things to go wrong. So I was very resistant to it. And then they figured it out.
First question with filming on a roof is, how the hell do you get on a roof with film equipment and a whole crew that has never filmed on a roof before? And the answer is not a ladder, it's actually bunk beds. So I have a bunk bed that I've had since I was probably like 10 years old, and my mom brought it all the way up from Phoenix, and we climbed onto the bunk bed, onto a low hanging roof that was probably like 6 feet, 8 feet top, something like that. And that's how we got onto the roof. So that's like one thing, was just figuring that out. Second thing was, I get a text from the location owners, because this is a different location, and they're like, hey, we have a slight issue. So everyone in the house has come down with COVID pretty much. And I'm like, oh, you're kidding me. Okay, great. So we were like, look, if we don't film on this rooftop, we don't have a film. And so we figured out if we never go inside the house, no one from the house ever leaves, and we wear N95s literally the entire time religiously while climbing up and down this roof, we would be okay and just avoid all air vents and all this stuff. And no one got sick. No one came close to getting sick. So we did somehow manage to be okay around that hurdle.
Another problem about the actual filming day was I had so many things I had to worry about. And then I had a little bit of a medical emergency that made me have to leave set, and it was very early in the day. And that was really hard because this was kind of the really important day for me to be there, and I wasn't able to be. One thing I think turned out really good about me having to leave was it gave Tyler the opportunity to step in.
For me, that was really scary because this was my first time going into all of this, and now it was like, okay, you got an AD, and also we're in a skeleton crew, so it's already smaller, and yeah, let's get on the roof and go do that. I feel like I was prepared really well, but it was really just nerve-wracking.
Tyler stepped up, and he did such a wonderful job, and I'm really proud of him, and it made it a lot easier on me knowing that he got to step in and did such a great job and held the fort down while I was gone, because I so badly wish I could have been there, but it just wasn't feasible, and I'm so proud of Tyler for everything that he did.
Yeah, there's like barely any outlets out here.
But it's really cool because like all the films are like really different this semester.
Hey Maddie, could we get an ETA?
Look at that.
Oh.
We had a week to find a new location, which is just incredibly difficult to find someone that's gonna let you basically be in their house for 12 to like 16 hours a day for an entire 3 days, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, within a week's notice. And eventually we did find the Bloom house.
The kitchen is on your left. This is what we have to work with in the kitchen. And then here's the living room.
So we were filming in an apartment, a student apartment, and one of the struggles with that was inside the actual location, we could not keep our whole crew. And so we had set up our crafty up in one of the lounges, and that was generally a pretty good place to keep people.
This weekend is just such a blur, I can't differentiate the days. But between days 3 and 6, and we had the cops called, noise complaints, hallway was filled with gear, and that was not okay because it's a fire hazard. Hellish, hellish, hellish noise coming from outside from Tequila Sunrise and cars.
Nick, he just showed me the camera looks like it is tilted a little differently. Ooh.
Oh, we can tilt it.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
It's adjustable.
He has a picture.
Yeah, it's adjustable. We just put it in.
You work with them?
Yes.
I'm not tall enough. Yeah, Walmart. Did I get these pink? What we had yesterday?
What we had? Okay.
Yeah.
I just think that if we can texture that couch a tiny bit more,
Yeah.
make it pop a little more.
So let's get
Nice.
another set with the sing on the couch, and then horizontal one.
Cool.
And then Nick, if we can get what we need.
Yep.
Cool. Are you
Over there, Sam, do we have it?
Yeah, we got enough to
Cut.
All right. Yes.
So at one point while filming at the Bloom house, the people who were living in the apartment, had some stuff going on early the next day, and they hadn't exactly fully realized exactly how long we would need to be there for like a 12 to 16 hour day or whatever have you. And they're like, I'm so sorry to do this to you, but we're gonna need you guys out of here by like 8. And I'm like, no shit, we're supposed to be here until midnight, okay, so we're gonna cut like 4 hours. It was a lot of me having to cut shots and figure out what is the minimum amount I need to make this film happen. We were just like, oh my God, how are we even gonna get this done on time? There's no way. And Maddie and we kept each other sane. I mean, without Maddie, I would have lost my mind, and I feel like without me, Maddie probably also would have lost her mind. Joe and Jaden are just like, I swear to God, I'm sure they wanted to like stab my eyes out or something. Joe is the DP, so he's camera, and then Jaden's our gaffer, and between every shot, there's minor tweaks that need to be made. Between every scene, there's pretty major tweaks that need to be made for camera and lighting. And so they're just like, Mackenzie, oh my God, why are you doing this to me? Why are you trying to make my life just absolutely awful? And they didn't say that, of course, they're professional, but you can feel the energy. They're like, everyone's super stressed.
Wait, what if we went from the other side? Hold on. I need that knife again. Where'd it go?
Those were together.
Okay, I have a better job for you. The best.
Here, and we get the thingy.
It's inside my, okay. Oh yeah, this one, right?
Yeah, that's what I was also thinking, yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
We just need to make sure that the kitchen is all set up as well as the living room.
Okay.
What can I do to help you?
You think if we went closer here, we'd get less wall?
Yeah, but I mean, like, I'm just trying to see like how close I can already get to the wall, like, especially with the tripod. So I think I'll probably go in the corner, the front side, just because I don't like how it looks a little bit like the fur right here.
I take that back. We need to send Luke to get a car because we need to get Daniel home ASAP.
So while working on Bloom, it would be an understatement to say we had tough days. And some days were tougher than others. I mean, one moment I remember is scene 13, when the two characters are in the kitchen together. And it's what I remember in the writing of the film being what I considered one of, if not the most important scenes of the film. And when we got there on set, I very quickly realized, oh crap, we have no time to film this in. So I was having to cut shots and combine shots and to try and get as few takes as possible in a scene that I considered to be the most important scene in the film. And that can be tough, because sometimes you can't be quite as precise as you might want to be, or have to be able to compromise in areas that you might not want to compromise in.
As all of this is happening, you know, like we're losing our location, we're losing daylight, sound's a mess, lights are like having issues, people are walking, all this stuff. I was just very angry, not an angry person, because I felt like I had done everything that I could to make sure that we would have a smooth set. I'm very much the type of person who likes to lead and make sure that everyone is feeling valued and cared for, and I felt like I let everyone down.
I know for myself, I was so stressed out during those final days because we had already hit so many different challenges getting us to that point. It's hard. It's really hard when you have so many things that you need to figure out and you're holding the stress of everybody.
So I almost was like, oh my God, do I just quit now? Do I just give up? And then I was like, get that shit out of your head.
But the reason we were still able to make it work is because I knew that for myself and our entire crew, we just had an incredible amount of love for the film that we were making and the work that we were doing, that no matter how bad things got, we just stayed calm, cool, and collected enough to just keep focusing ahead on the film that we were making, and all had that same goal in mind of making the best film possible.
That's the cover, that's the cover.
Alright guys, that's a wrap on day 6, but more importantly, that's a wrap on Daniel Stonewall.
Well, again, post-production it's a whole nother set of problems, right?
I've worked with Nick before and Josiah. I've worked with Luke before, and I know that it's such a good team that I just wanted to help them in any way possible. So I just like casually lent them my computer for like anything possible to like help them out with like rendering stuff like last minute. So like instead of like taking an hour and 20 minutes to render something out, it would take like 20 minutes.
So something about this film that makes it so different from every other film that I've worked on is the VFX. It's just at such a higher caliber than I've ever had to deal with, which it starts in the planning of the film, right? Where something as simple as a holographic calendar, it involves so many people. First of all, you have your graphic designers who have to design the assets for that hologram. You have your VFX artists who have to composite it into the scene. Oh, but because it's added into the shot that you're working on here, the cinematographer has to be involved, keeping framing in mind and the look of the film in mind. And we want it to emit light, so the gaffer has to be involved to try and figure out how the color that the graphic designer created will work on set and how they will actually light it to make it look like that light is hitting the actor. Oh, but it's a calendar, so that's part of the production design. So the production designer really needs to be a part of it to make sure it matches the rest of the world. And I have a fantastic creative hands-on producer who needs to be a part of these decisions because I value their input. And now the writer wrote the calendar, so the writer should be involved, and you very quickly get to see how something as simple as a calendar that a person points to for 3 seconds becomes this giant thing that involves so many people. And I've never really had that on a film prior to Bloom. And the other end of VFX that makes it so difficult is we had a great VFX artist, Nash, but it was his first time working with VFX, so he had to totally learn how to do VFX for this film. And we were trying to use the app Fusion because that's just a tab within DaVinci. Because I was under the mindset of, well, if we can keep everything in the one software, that will simplify the workflow. That might have been the worst decision that I made for Bloom, because Fusion turned out to be incredibly buggy to where it would do things like just randomly crash, or Nash would do something for a shot, leave it, come back, and it would look totally different than how he lumped it off. And it was just a nightmare. I mean, there's no talking around that. Because of the nightmare that was trying to do VFX in Fusion, and the fact that now that we were entering a new semester, our VFX artist had become a lot busier, we decided to onboard another VFX artist to kind of take things from where they were and finish them and polish them and get them into that final state. And that's Eric Lessing.
Hi, I'm Eric Lessing, and I'm the VFX artist for Bloom. So when I joined Bloom, I definitely expected a challenge, and what I mean by that is I had never worked with anything like that before. I had some idea of what I could do, mainly working in After Effects, which I was most comfortable in, but there was really nothing concrete that I had done before that was anything like what I was asked to do. All of the holograms, all of the 3D aspects of it, the tracking and everything like that. I had worked in each one of those segments separately, but never all at the same time. So getting on the project and having to use every single aspect of that at the same time, it was crazy.
Nash met with Eric, and the two of them kind of went over all the VFX shots that were done, the 5% of stuff that was not done, and they talked through and game planned everything that needed to happen. Eric then took that and started remaking all the VFX shots in After Effects and just spent painstaking amount of hours trying to remake all the VFX shots in the film.
The last days before film festival were like, there could be like a separate like behind the scenes documentary on that if there was cameras filming. It's like its own sort of narrative arc that happened there.
So the deadline for the film festival at NAU was fastly approaching us. So Eric was working tirelessly to get all of our shots done so that we could submit to the festival.
So on delivery day, when we went to the UTV office with Nick, the director, Nash, Luke, Andrew, everyone was there, and that was mainly where we had everything that we wanted, and it was just final tweaks with everyone there because we had all been working separately before. So this was kind of the first time that all of us were in the same place, all giving our own input into the final product.
But when we finally sat down, I was the picky director and went, oh wait, but that's good, but can we do this instead, or could we do that instead? And then Nash had similar ideas or different ideas, and we ended up adding some things to some of the VFX shots, which took, I don't know, somewhere between 5-6 hours maybe.
And then we needed to render everything. So that's where that started. And I say started because that was not an easy process. Like I said, I had never done anything all the way through like this before. So getting to the final output where we were rendering it on the computer, I was not expecting it to say 20 hours of rendering for a single shot. And I was waiting for it to go down, and it never did.
And we didn't have that kind of time, because on top of working on Bloom, I was still finishing Memory Lane. So I ended up having to drive from the edit bays on campus to my apartment, back and forth, jumping between films, working and overseeing VFX, and then going back to my apartment to do sound work.
We were able to come up with a little game plan, and we were able to actually start a render farm.
So what is a render farm? So what we're trying to do is split it up across multiple computers. So instead of one computer exporting 15 shots, it could be 15 computers exporting one shot. Or at least that's kind of the idea on paper. We didn't have 15 computers though.
So at the time, I had only slept for about 6 hours in 2 days, and we were at the render farm portion of it, and I was beat, and I had to hand off all of my work to the rest of the crew, which did an amazing job. By the time I left, we were rendering on, I believe, 5 machines at the same time. It could have been more after that because they said they got it out much quicker than anticipated, so kudos to them for that, but no less than 5 machines.
By the time that we had all the VFX as different exports that we could put into the film, Andrew had stolen back his computer, finished working on a film, and then his computer was now available again for us, so we were able to continue working. And we started re-adding the VFX into the film, the final VFX. We got to the point where we had all the VFX in there that Eric made. Nash added some of the security camera shots that he did, and we went to export the film, and it wouldn't export.
And Nick's response, which, might I add, I kind of feel is justified in the moment, was throwing the office chair that he was using to sit in the studio, and it broke the wheel below at least 2, I think.
I needed to do that to relieve stress, but then it just added to my annoyance, because then I had to do the entire rest of that problem solving and exporting in a slanted chair because its wheel was broken off.
I think most people who know Nick outside of like the editing bay know him as like the calmest, chillest, most collected person, and that was probably his most extreme moment of just frustration. I found it kind of comforting also, because it was like, no, even he has his moments of, we don't really know how to take this.
To me, it just didn't make sense, you know, because I thought the problem was Fusion. I thought Fusion was the reason why it wasn't working. Well, all these new VFX shots, they weren't in Fusion, they were in After Effects. What would have Fusion been? Oh, Nash had made the security cameras using a single element that had a piece of it from Fusion. And that was somehow still breaking everything. When we did the bare minimum of just changing a setting in Fusion, it prevented the entire film from being exported. So what we ended up doing was taking out all of the security camera shots, remaking security camera shots using Zero DaVinci, and exporting that version of the film out. And finally, by doing that, we were able to export the film and submit it to the film festival.
It was up to even the last few minutes of time we had, we were still working on it, which is something that I think is kind of like representative of Nick's work ethic, is to like refine something as much as you possibly can with the time that you have.
By that point, I had not slept in about 4 days. And it was probably one of the most brutal experiences working on a film, because I was just so incredibly sleep deprived. I also don't eat when I'm working on a film, so I was probably fairly starved by different moments in that editing process. And by the time that we were finally done, I think Andrew made us some spaghetti or something, or some soup. Andrew made us something, and I just ate it, went back to my apartment, and just went to bed.
And to kick off the awards ceremony, I will start off with nominations, and then I will announce the winner. Once your name is called, please come up and receive your black either from Paul or Kurt. And the winner is Kaylee Max Maxwell for Bloom. Luke Gill for Bloom. Josiah Battles for Bloom. Eliza Quinn for Bloom. Daniel Stonewall for Bloom.
When I was writing it, I didn't really have the confidence as a writer that I do now. And it wasn't until the NAU Film Festival, when Bloom was winning all these awards, that I was like, ooh, we're doing it.
And the winner goes for McShane Stewart for Bloom.
You can't help but like walk with some sort of confidence, knowing that what you're doing is getting recognized like internationally, locally, like all this stuff. So I kind of learned that no matter what, I should always be walking with that confidence, and I should always be acting like I won an award, and like you should always pitch a script as if it's already won so many awards and you feel so confident in it and you love it.
To be honest with you, in terms of the Bloom Film Festival successes, I can't honestly keep up with them. So every time I turn around, there's another win or acceptance. The beautiful thing about the Bloom Film Festival success is, unlike other films that have had success, we've had lots of films get success, Bloom has it in all the categories: acting, editing, directing, producing, script. So that's rare to have it be across the board. And you're only as good as the weakest link, or you're only as good as everybody on the team, from a PA to the art department, which is not even acknowledged. I think they got an award too. For me, that's very exciting, because it's a complete recognition of the whole operation.
I am so unbelievably grateful for the success that Bloom has had in its film festival run, because I love that film so much, so it's just really satisfying to see that it has resonated with other people as well.
And the winner goes for Nick Hiratsuka.
Put so much work into that film, and it was something that for me at least, it was my child. That whole semester, I hardly even remember what I was doing in my other classes. Bloom was the center of my semester. Everybody put in work to this film, and everyone made it possible, and it also just shows like how passionate everyone was. There were so many aspects that were important to us, and we didn't let one aspect overrule another. We wanted to make sure everything was the way that we wanted to, and I think that really showed through with the awards that we won.
I think every part of it, the reason Bloom has success is that all of those parts are working so well in this film.
And I think it really speaks to the fact that despite all these setbacks that the film has had, despite all these long hours that we have had to pull, that we had a team that was so dedicated that we were able to overcome those obstacles and not only come out with a film, but come out with a film that people around the world have enjoyed. And that just means everything to me.